Is Dune Part 2 in danger of moving to 2024? I've heard reports of this. None of them are legitimate. So I do want to stress that there has been certainly conversation about that. You've probably, if you're on social media, have heard rumors that Dune Part 2 is moving. You might have even seen sources with the blue check mark confirming it or at least saying that it is going to happen. I'm not there yet. I don't believe any of those reports. However, I do believe conversations are being had because specifically of the Zendaya piece of this movie. Challengers, which was a movie starring Zendaya that was supposed to release in August, has now moved to 2024 due to the writers and actors strike, which I support fully. What this does mean, though, is Dune Part 2, I think, is in legitimate danger to move. There has been conversation about other films possibly moving. That has been kind of the topic of Hollywood these past few weeks. Does anything end up moving due to these ongoing strikes? Here's why I think Dune Part 2 could move. At this moment, I'm kind of worried about this chance of this film releasing in October because they need the actors to promote this film. If you got the chance to roll out Timothée Chalamet, Florence Pugh, Zendaya, Austin Butler, Oscar Isaac, which I guess he wouldn't actually be on this, but Josh Brolin would be on this press tour. If you have so many, specifically those four young actors, four of the most popular young actors who are the moment, the culture, the zeitgeist amongst less than 30-year-old people. I don't know why I said less than 30-year-old people when I'm really trying to say Gen Z, Gen X, millennials, all that age group. These four actors are extremely important. They're maybe the four biggest movie stars between the age of 25 and 35. If you don't have Zendaya promoting this movie, if you don't have Austin Butler, if you don't have Timothée Chalamet, Florence Pugh, like that's a missed opportunity. And I'd be pretty questionable if Warner Brothers is not going to do the movie, would do this movie without them promoting this. Actors are so important to promoting a movie, and when you have four like that, it seems like a weird thing to not promote this movie with them there. Thus, I could easily see this movie moving. With that said, what does that have? What are the implications of Dune Part 2 moving? Let's go hypothetical. What if Dune Part 2 moves to the 2024 calendar year? The biggest implication, besides the fact that obviously that is bad for the film business, and I just can't believe the studios are doing this, the fact that the studios are not actively working harder to make a deal with the Writers Guild and with the Actors Guild is just shocking. And the fact that they're blaming the writers and actors when in reality, like, this is all on their plate, this is all their fault. What this would mean is if this does move to 2024, Dune Part 2 would drop out of this year's Oscars race. It would not be in competition. Even if it moved to like January or February, it would not be qualified unless it premiered in 2023, which again, maybe the studios figures out a way to technically like kind of work it. I don't see this film releasing without, again, Florence Pugh, all those people, Zendaya specifically, like promoting this. So that's a big question mark of it. If this was to drop out, this means that the race, which probably had a few slots that were just kind of penciled in for Dune, they open up. They open up in a really interesting way, and that's what we're going to really focus today. I'm recording this just for context in case there is news that comes out or in case I'm proven wrong or proven right. August 8th, 7:57 p.m. PST. Dune Part 2, if it was to drop, here are the categories that it could easily be nominated for. And the reason I say easily is because for most of these categories, 2, 4, 6, 8, 11 categories in total, it received 10 of these nominations in 2021 with the first one. So if this film was to be as successful as the first one did, 10 of these were films that the other one previously got. Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Cinematography, Best Costuming, Best Director, which director does have an asterisk, which I'll come back to, Best Film Editing, Best Hair and Makeup, Best Original Score, Best Picture, Best Production Design, Best Sound, and Best Visual Effects. The asterisk, let's focus on that asterisk real quick. Denis Villeneuve was not nominated for Best Director for Dune in the 2021, ended up being the Oscars of 2022 race. He was not nominated. It was considered a huge major flub. I don't see if Dune Part 2 was just as good, I don't see them passing him up again. So it just does feel like he could easily be in this year's director's race, which is already getting crowded with guys like Nolan and Scorsese for sure being there. If Dune Part 2 didn't drop out, or doesn't release in 2023, I should say, and drops out from contention, if you look at Dune, the first movie, it won 6 awards. It won Best Cinematography, it won Best Film Editing, it won Best Original Score, it won Best Production Design, it won Best Sound, and it won Best Visual Effects. Those are legitimate categories that it could repeat again. Those are all, Hans Zimmer does the score. You have visual effects, you have cinematography, Roger Deakins. Like, here's the thing. Some of these you might have even said, like, that might be a pencil in thing, like production design, score, cinematography. Like, the cinematography scale of Dune Part 1 is incredible. And by the trailers, it looks even more astonishing in Part 2. That's where it's just like, if Dune Part 2 was to drop out, all of a sudden this race feels a lot more open in certain categories where it's just like, what happened? And the answer will be Dune Part 2 is not there. Thus, there is huge openings in some races, specifically production design, specifically film editing, cinematography, and the most important one, which is the focus of today's episode. If you had to give me one surefire bet to make day after the last year's Oscars, after the Everything Everywhere All at Once Oscars aired, if you were like one sure bet on any film to win next year, and what is that category? I would say Best Visual Effects, Dune Part 2, lock. Don't even need to see the film. Guaranteed that is the best visual effects release in the year 2023. I would still believe that. And if Dune Part 2 comes out, I don't see any future of which it does not win the best visual effects. With that said, though, if it's not in contention, visual effects gets weird. Here is what Variety put as their 5 at this moment. Or I should say, these are the 5 that are movies that have released, that we are like, okay, if the race was today, here's what the 5 would be. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, Oppenheimer, The Little Mermaid, and Transformers Rise of the Beast. That's a bad visual effects category. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 looks good by comparison of the other MCU. In terms of it being an incredibly visually impressive film, I think it looks good. I don't think it would be deserving of any means visual effects. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny has bad special effects in it. The Little Mermaid has bad special effects in it. Transformers Rise of the Beast looks good enough. And by that, I mean the visual effects are largely strong. They just feel repetitive. I've seen them. Oppenheimer has a lot of good visual effects, and I think will probably be in this category regardless if Dune Part 2 is or isn't in here. But it's also a film not full with a ton of visual effects. So it's now this question, if Dune Part 2 is out of this race becomes far more open with anything being really able to win it. And also not a lot of things really where you're looking at it, you're like, what would win this category? Like, is this a year where Transformers Rise of the Beast just wins it because it's out and it's competent compared to, like, if The Little Mermaid and Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny legitimately get nominated, I'm going to be like, those are two bad looking films. These are two films that by design, because Disney is cheap and Disney is lazy and they rely overly on CGI, all the complaints that we've heard about Disney recently, I'd be like, this is embarrassing that these two films got into visual effects. That means contenders are going to start creeping up. And again, if Dune Part 2 moves up, anything, this category feels wide open. It might be just the case of they just give it to Oppenheimer because they're like, well, at least the visual effects, while sparse in this movie, look incredible. But the contenders would mean films like Barbie could get nominated, John Wick Chapter 4, Mission Impossible 7. Those are just some of the films that we've seen for sure that could get nominated. Don't know if, again, necessarily any of them would. Action films don't typically get nominated for visual effects, especially ones where it's all done kind of on screen through stunt work. It seems like the Academy has to actually see the visual effects, so you don't really see it like that. Blue Beetle, which will release in, I think, literally like T-minus 3 days, maybe? Today's August 8th. Does it release on the 11th? Regardless, Blue Beetle, by the trailer, kind of looks generic. It doesn't look like it has particularly great special effects. I mean, the visual effects look better than The Flash, the visual effects in The Flash were god-awful, and that's why it's not on this list right now. But all of a sudden, maybe Blue Beetle gets a nomination. Other films that could get it that we haven't seen, there's some other big studio films that we should talk about. We have Wonka, which would be based on that trailer with the small Hugh Grant. I'm like, really? That's going to get a nomination? I don't really see a world where that gets visual effects. The Marvels, which again kind of has the MCU problem of just like, maybe this film looks good. Maybe this one, Nia DaCosta does a really good job and the visual effects kind of stand out. But it's just, I don't think visual effects has ever been Marvel's strong suit. I don't think they've ever won the visual effects award. So it's just like, I don't really see the Marvels breaking through in any way. Hunger Games, Ballad of Fire and or Snake and whatever the hell that movie's called. Like, again, it's kind of this action movie problem. Rebel Moon, which is Zack Snyder, like, you know, at least Zack Snyder is able to deliver good effects, but they're usually to kind of incomprehensible degrees, and the Academy isn't fond of Zack Snyder. So you have a lot of weird ones like that. So and what I'm trying to point out here is I'm kind of having question marks on any of these films actually realistically getting nominated. So now you kind of get in this interesting category where it's like, okay, Aquaman, The Lost Kingdom, or whatever that movie is called. I don't remember what the actual title of that movie is. Aquaman 2, we'll call it that. Aquaman 2, maybe it gets a nomination just for being, if it's on the same level of Aquaman, maybe it does. Now, I've heard Aquaman 2 is a mess, and if this film is downright terrible, I don't really see it likely getting a nomination. But, maybe it does. Maybe Aquaman 2 is that one where it's just like, you know what, Aquaman, the first one had good visual effects. Maybe the superhero thing kind of carries over. So you can't disqualify Aquaman 2. What I think most realistically what would happen is if Dune Part 2 was to be moved to 2024, I think it's going to make room for kind of a more smaller indie film getting on this list, like Poor Things, which is Yorgos Lanthimos' film, newest film, or a film like The Creator could go on here. There's also a film called Spaceman, which stars Adam Sandler and Paul Dano, which is a sci-fi kind of fantasy epic. Like, that could get on this list. Like, those are all of a sudden in contention. You could even have like a seasoned veteran in Ridley Scott getting Napoleon nominated for visual effects. What's most exciting about if Dune Part 2 moves up is I really do feel like there's going to be opportunities for movies that don't get this chance and would just be completely ignored because of Dune Part 2 to get in, because I think this race is kind of a mess this year. And it also makes this race completely unpredictable, because this could just be a thing where you look down and you're like, okay, Guardians gets it, Indiana Jones gets it, The Little Mermaid gets it, The Marvels gets it. Oh, crap, we have 4 Disney movies. What are we going to do? This race could go anywhere. That's why I'm keeping an eye out on Dune Part 2. This is all should have been avoided because, this film should be coming out. But with the writers and actors striking, Hollywood now has to live with it. And Zaslav, being the idiot that he continues to prove himself to be, has put himself in a situation where probably one of the most anticipated movies may not even release this year. I really just don't see. Here is why I'm saying that it may not release. I just don't believe that this film would come out without the promotion of Zendaya, Timothée Chalamet, Florence Pugh, Austin Butler. I don't. I think they would want this movie to premiere with those people touring and promoting this movie and being all over social media. If it's not, like, this could end up being kind of a movie that flops without them. Not saying that this movie would fully flop. I think there's still enough excitement to see Dune Part 2, but there would certainly be more if Zendaya, Florence Pugh were promoting this movie. That's why I'm really skeptical of this movie releasing if the strikes continue going on. With that all said, kind of a fun way to talk about the strikes, to talk about visual effects, to talk about the Academy, and kind of just show the implications of what is going on with the executives, with the studio heads being so stupid, being so narrow-minded, just all the crap they're causing right now. If Dune Part 2 does get delayed, blame it completely on the studios. It's their fault. Do not believe their lies that this is because the writers or actors won't take a fair deal. David Zaslav got like a $200 million pay raise a few weeks ago for his signing, despite the fact that they don't have enough money to pay their writers. That should tell you all you need to know about billionaires and the corrupt shit they're doing in Hollywood. With that all said, thank you so much for watching this video. Let's see. Am I right? Maybe Dune 2 does move, or maybe this all does get resolved. The strikes do, and that's obviously the most hopeful. And at this moment, I just don't believe it to be the most true or likely scenario. So we'll see. Thank you all for watching. Take care and bye-bye.